March 1974, 29 years after the end of World War II, peace and happiness had spread everywhere. But in Lubang Island, Philippines, a soldier was still fighting in the midst of a dense and scary jungle. His uniform was torn from place to place, but his rifle and sword were still shining. This man was none other than an intelligence officer of the Japanese Imperial Army. He was fighting alone even after 29 years of World War II, that too against the American forces. Imagine when the whole world was celebrating peace, new cities were being built and people had forgotten the old wars. Then this man was fighting a war alone, which had ended years ago. His name was Hiroo Onoda, for whom time had stopped in 1944. He felt that the enemy was still in his grasp, and as soon as he left this jungle, he would be caught. But here the question arises, how can anyone be so crazy? How can a person who has been cut off from the world for 29 years alone, without any supply or help, live? World War II ended in 1945 for the world, but it didn't actually end in 1974. Because technically the war continues until the last soldier surrenders. Was it just a soldier's duty, or his stubbornness, which made him the last war prisoner of World War II? Welcome back to Money Basics videos. Viewers, Hiroo Onoda was born in a small village in Japan in 1922. But this was not the Japan that we know today for robots and technology. This was a Japan that was dreaming of conquering the whole world. At that time, when a child took his first step in Japan, he was not taught to walk, but to die for his emperor. Onoda's childhood was not in sports, but in the shadow of strict discipline, an environment where the word surrender was not even present in the dictionary. It was taught from childhood that it is better to die than to surrender after losing the war. Onoda was also born in this militarized environment, which was taught from childhood that loyalty means to consider every command of your commander as God's command. But what was the command that forced Onoda to fight World War II alone for 29 years? The year was 1944. World War II was at its peak, and Japan's competition was with America and its allies. The situation had become quite serious, and Japan was losing this war badly. To teach the Allied forces a lesson, they decided to make such guerrilla soldiers who could secretly wreak havoc in the enemy's territory. Hiroo Onoda was also one of those few selected soldiers who were sent to Nakano Military School to train the guerrillas. This was not an ordinary military school. Hiroo Onoda was given intensive training in intelligence, spying, and secretly attacking the enemy. He was taught how to survive alone in the jungle and set the enemy supplies on fire, and how to exhaust an entire army through guerrilla warfare. But the most important was the special instruction given by his commander. After completing the training, the commander looked into Onoda's eyes and said, "You must not surrender at any cost. Remember, you are not even allowed to commit suicide. Whether it takes 3 years or 5 years, we will meet again. But until then, do not let the enemy sleep in peace." These words set Onoda on fire that would not cool down for the next 29 years. For this mission, Onoda was sent to Lubang Island in the Philippines. This is a small island that is full of dense forests. In terms of warfare, this was very important for Japan because this is where America and its allies' supplies passed through. Hiroo Onoda, who had now become an intelligence officer, had a very strict responsibility: disrupt and destroy. That is, secretly attacking the enemy's supply lines, keeping an eye on them, and turning every inch of the jungle into hell for the enemy. He had to stay on this mission until the Japanese Imperial Army came to take him back. Whether it took 5 years or 10 years, it had only been a year since Onoda went to Lubang Island, that in August 1945, the world saw the use of nuclear weapons for the first time. America dropped atomic bombs on Japan's cities Hiroshima and Nagasaki and shocked the whole world. After this attack, Japan officially surrendered, and this was the turning point from where World War II ended. The war was over, but there was no one in the Philippines to give this news to Hiroo Onoda on Lubang Island. He was still there with his 3 companions, Akatsu, Shimada, and Kozuka. Allied forces, who had knowledge of the guerrillas on the island, threw millions of leaflets there, on which it was written that Japan has surrendered, the war is over, come down from the mountains. But when Onoda read this leaflet, he doubted that this was perhaps a trap, to trap him and his companions. Because he was taught that the enemy is very cunning. He will spread false news and try to mislead you. There was only one thing in Onoda's mind, that until my commander comes back, my war will continue. From here began the test of time, which broke the limits of human endurance. For the next few years, Onoda and his companions roamed this island like ghosts. They had neither a roof to hide their heads, nor any food to eat. Only the dense forests of the jungle and the wet land were their home. To survive, they spent on raw bananas, coconuts, and sometimes rice, stolen from the farms of the locals. When hunger was on the rise, they would leave the jungle to hunt a cow and dry its meat in the sun for months. But this was not just survival. Onoda also attacked the local police and the villagers many times, considering them his enemies. The price of this lonely war was also very heavy. His companions were also slowly losing their courage, but since Onoda was their senior, they had to listen to him. Slowly, Onoda's companions left him one by one. In 1949, Akatsu surrendered. In 1954, Shimada was killed in a police encounter. And finally in 1972, after the death of his last companion Kozuka, Hiroo Onoda was now all alone on this island. Lubang Island is a very low-population island anyway. But the locals there knew that Japanese guerrillas were hiding in the jungles of the island. Onoda considered them his enemy's companions and attacked them in the dark of the night. In the 29 years, Onoda and his companions killed more than 30 local people and injured more than 100. The island's police tried to catch them many times, but Onoda's guerrilla training was so hard that he disappeared again and again. The Philippine government also tried to convince him many times that the war was over. He dropped newspapers from the sky, threw letters and pictures of Onoda's family, and even his brother's voice was heard on the loudspeaker. But Onoda thought it was all a conspiracy by the enemy. He was now quite famous, but no one could see him. Some thought he was dead, and some said that his soul was now on the island. Surprisingly, where the military and search missions failed to find him, a 24-year-old Japanese boy, Norio Suzuki, showed this work without firing a bullet. Norio Suzuki was not a soldier, but he was only fond of adventure. He had only 3 goals in his life. The first was to see Panda, the second was to see Yeti, and the third was to find Hiroo Onoda. He set out to find him in the jungle of Lubang, and found him in just 4 days. On February 20th, 1974, Norio Suzuki and Hiroo Onoda met. First, Onoda tried to shoot, but Suzuki shouted his name in Japanese and said, "Onoda-san, the Emperor and the people of Japan are worried about you." Suzuki told him that Japan has now become a great power, but Onoda had only one insistence, that I will only believe when my commanding officer comes here and gives me this order. Suzuki had understood that this war would not end with weapons, but only with an order. Now the problem here was that the commander had ordered Onoda for guerrilla warfare 29 years ago. After World War II, no one knew where he was now. After many days, the Japanese government found that officer, who was now selling books and making a living. Major Taniguchi was the same officer who had ordered Onoda. After a lot of planning, a special mission was planned in which Major Taniguchi was sent to Lubang Island so that he could break the chain that he had tied 29 years ago. When Onoda saw his old commander, he stood up in a state of tension and started saluting. At the same time, his commander took out a piece of paper and read the words written on it. Its translation is, "Officer Onoda, Japan has lost. Your mission is now over. Surrender your sword and rifle to the enemy." Onoda, who entered Lubang at the age of 22, was now 52 years old. He had seen the best years of his youth, his friends and his life, the loyalty that was no less than a madness in the eyes of the world. When Onoda returned to Japan, he had become a national hero. He expressed his grief many times at the death of those 30 people whom he had killed as enemies. But the Japan he had left 29 years ago, he never got that Japan. Now there was the reign of technology and Western culture. He could not adjust in this new environment and left Japan and went to Brazil next year. In 1996, Onoda again went to the same island where he had lost his youth. He donated $10,000 to the local people there and also made a scholarship fund, so that he can lessen the pain of those people whose elders he had killed unknowingly. He gave many interviews about this journey of his life and also mentioned it openly in his book. but his story became famous all over the world when on January 16, 2014, at the age of 91, the Hiroo Onoda died in Tokyo due to heart failure. Undoubtedly, Japan had to face a very bad defeat in World War II. But the Hiroo Onoda was probably the only soldier who won this war, but he lost the war of time. I hope you will like and share this video of Money Basics. Thank you very much for your loving comments.